Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the premiere episode of Coast to Coast College Pregame Football Show. I'm one of your hosts, Bill Shawcross. You can call me Uncle Shally. You can call me Shally. You can call me Scholastic Shally. I have too many nicknames at this point. This is going to be your one-stop shop for everything college football for the upcoming season. Every week, we're going to be here Saturday morning, kicking off your Saturdays before all the noon game kickoffs. Down in the bottom is a man that you probably recognize if you watch our other podcast. He is the only Buckeye fan in this country that I actually like and get along with, and that I love on a personal basis. Is my man College Cottrell Simpson.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Obviously, college football is the wheelhouse, and now we got a chance to really get into it, and the season is here.
I am pumped as well. If you guys watch our other show, Wire to Wire, you obviously know the bread and butter and the most exciting thing for me and Cottrell is always college football season. We love everything else too. We just have a passion for college football. Now, this last guy I'm going to introduce to you, certainly not least by any means. I've known this guy for a couple of years now. I am sad that he moved away. But that being said, it's an advantage for this show. If you're going to call yourself Coast to Coast, you got to have somebody on the West Coast. And locking down the West Coast for us is going to be my man, Alex Elmore, out in Oregon.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm bringing the West Coast bias to the show. You're going to hear it with all my takes, and trust me, Coast is going down. Pac-12 is coming this year. I got more for that coming later. But let's kick off the show, and thanks for having me, guys.
So listen, every week, let's get to it. Every week, listen, we're gonna go over the basic stuff. We'll have poll reactions. We'll be previewing the biggest games of the week. We're going to have a Heisman tracker that lasts all year long. We'll be talking about, college football playoff predictions. We'll do some fun stuff too. We'll probably have brackets, silly discussions, all that good stuff as well. But it's going to be an informative show. We're going to keep it light, but we're going to give you everything you need to know before the games kick off at noon. Starting next week, for all the guys that like to sprinkle money on the games and, partake in the little betting action, we'll have our pick'em segment as well. So we're going to get it going. We're going to start right with, the season zero, as the hardcore fans like to call it. It is the toughest week of the year. It's usually only a couple good matchups, and, this year is no different. But we're going to start with the preseason poll reaction. What do you guys think in general just about the preseason poll? Because I have strong feelings on it one way.
Alex, go ahead, man. I want to hear from you.
Yeah, man. I definitely look at this AP poll. The AP poll makes me laugh every single year. I feel like there's a team or two in there that should not be. There's a team or two that should be much higher than they are. This year, the team that really got me my attention is Iowa, with the transfer of Cade McNamara. He's going to be a stud for that offense. The offense has had nothing going for it for years now. Without their defense, they would probably not win a game. But with Cade McNamara stepping in and his fellow Michigan transfer, Eric All, I'm excited to see what they can do. They also, of course, made their defense better with Nick Jackson, who's a linebacker from Virginia, coming in. And I'm excited to see them play. And I do actually expect them, as I'm sure we'll talk about the Big Ten later, I do expect them to actually be in that title game later on this year. So that's kind of one of my first picks for a team I think is a little bit too low. But another team I'm looking forward to is that Texas A&M at 23. They just came off one of the best recruiting classes in the country. And it should be interesting to see what kind of product they put out on the field. What about you guys?
So for me, I would say the big one, you just touched on one of them, so I'll go right there. Texas A&M. That's a team that I'm very high on this upcoming year. Connor Wegman, I think, he showed last year in spurts when he got inserted into the moment, really out of nowhere as a true freshman, that, he's ready to take those horns and be ready to lead a Texas A&M to the promised land. So I love Texas A&M this year. You hit on the recruiting class from last year. They had 6 guys in the top 25 of the ESPN 300 for the 2022 class. So those guys have a year under their belt. I do realize that some of them hit the portal and are no longer there. But I think that Texas A&M team is in a position right now where they have that young talent, and they're going to be, growing at the right time, and they're going to all be together. I also think a big addition for them this year, they brought in Bobby Petrino to be their offensive coordinator. I think that's going to do wonders for that offense. Texas A&M always has, a great defense behind them, but I think their offense with the weapons that they have around Wegman is going to be incredible this year. And they have the luxury of their toughest game this season being in College Station against Nick Saban and those Crimson Tide. So I love A&M this year. I think they're going to finish way higher than 23. And, I think, once the end of the season comes, I think they're going to be in that discussion of being a team that could make the college football playoff. Now, a team that I think is way too high, in my opinion, is TCU. TCU lost so many prospects last season. And last year, they weren't supposed to be as good as they were. So while I understand, they had that magical season, obviously Max Duggan had the incredible, Heisman-esque campaign, finishing top 3 in that race, but he's no longer there. They lost their running back. They lost their number 1 receiver in Quentin Johnston. I don't see how that TCU team rebounds this quickly. And so I personally wouldn't have them at 17. I think you have other teams that are right behind them that have so much experience, right there. Oregon State has DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback. Wisconsin brought in Tanner Mordecai. Oklahoma, Dylan Gabriel was there for his 15th year of college football. Drake May at North Carolina. I just think TCU is still riding high on a little bit of that magical season last year, and I think they're going to ultimately fall pretty flat and be out of top 25 here rather soon.
Yeah, so I agree with you on TCU. I think TCU is one of those teams where, unfortunately, it's kind of the reason why I hate preseason top 25. If you beat TCU in the first couple weeks here and they fall off, like I think a lot of people think they're going to, for all the reasons Cottrell just mentioned, you're going to get a ranked win, under your belt for the end of the year. And that's the stuff I can't stand. We'll get into more of that in a couple minutes, but I do agree with both of you on Iowa and Texas A&M for being too low. I think those teams have higher ceilings than people are giving them credit for. Alex mentioned the transfers coming in from Michigan and just the other guys they have returning to that program. Cade McNamara is at least going to give them, the opportunity to be able to drop back and actually throw the ball, on a semi-consistent basis. He's not a bad quarterback. He lost his job at Michigan to J.J. McCarthy, and that was just a situation where the writing was on the wall for a long time. JJ was a 5-star kid coming in. It was just eventually going to be his team, and Harbaugh made the decision to do it. Cade McNamara is a very capable quarterback. Eric All is a very good tight end. He's kind of in the same boat. That team is definitely going to be way more consistent, and actually have a little bit, be able to throw the ball downfield and stretch defenses a little bit this year, where they weren't able to do that last year. Texas A&M, I agree with Cottrell. I mean, I think this just has to be the year where they put up or shut up. They have that top recruiting class. All those kids are sophomores now, plus the returning seniors and juniors they have. And as long as I think as long as Jimbo can, kind of keep his ego in check, and you brought Bobby Petrino in for a reason. Bobby Petrino has always been a good offensive coach. If you're gonna let him be your OC, you got to let him be your OC, and you got to let him run the offense and call the plays and trust in him. I think 18 through 21 are all very interesting teams, if I'm being honest. Cottrell already mentioned DJ, at Oregon State. What do they look like? How do they factor into the Pac-10? I would love Alex's take on that, even though it's his arch nemesis team. Wisconsin, Tanner Mordecai, they brought him in. They have Braylon Allen still there. He's one of the top 5 running backs in the country. Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma. We mentioned him already. He's on his 8th year of eligibility somehow. And then you Drake May, UNC, who is, on everybody's top 5 Heisman list. And, how is that defense going to react this year? Is he going to have to put up 45 every game to win? I think 18 through 25 is just real interesting this year. I do agree with TCU. I feel like TCU by week 4 or 5 might not even be ranked. And that's crazy. There's always one team every year. If I have to go with one team ranked too low, if I'm going to drink the Kool-Aid this year, I think it's Texas. I mean, if Texas is everything that, they're made out to be, and we're supposed to believe in the hype this year, I think they're better than, the next couple teams above them. I was shocked Texas didn't make the top 10, if I'm being honest.
I'll tell you one thing. I did not make that mistake.
I love Texas this year too. I know we're gonna break down some more stuff here as well, but I love Texas this year. I think bringing back Quinn Ewers, he has that experience under his belt, and all the reports are saying that the guy right behind him in Arch Manning has been lighting up camps since since he got there early in the spring. So I think that's a situation where, you saw last year Texas they were inches away from beating an Alabama team, and that would completely change the trajectory of their season. But you figure if you bring in Arch Manning in a game like that instead of Hudson Card, you have no drop off, behind a guy like Quinn Ewers. So I think Texas is in a very good spot this year. And yes, they did lose Bijan Robinson. And that's a huge loss when you lose that caliber running back. But I just think Texas has so much talent, and being led by, Steve Sarkisian and having that offensive minded presence is going to do numbers for him this year. But
what other let's just ask one real quick question and we'll move on, because I don't want to get stuck too much on the poll here because it's going to change so much. And like I said, we're at a week where most of these teams aren't even playing. So if you had to pick one dark horse outside the top 10, and we'll take Texas off the board because we just talked about them, that could somehow make a magical Cinderella-like run into the college football playoff, who would it be?
I mean, for me, that's easy. Texas A&M is that team. I think they have the schedule to do it. Obviously, if you run the table in the SEC, and then you're going to get Georgia on the other side. We didn't even talk about Georgia. Georgia's got a cakewalk of a schedule. They should roll into the SEC championship game pretty unscathed. And so I think for a team like Texas A&M, if you beat Bama and then you go into that SEC championship game and you find a way to not even beat Georgia, but if you keep that game competitive and that's the only loss on your resume, then you have as good as a resume as anybody to say that you belong in the college football playoff. Right now, they're at 23-2, so they got some ground to make up. But with the SEC schedule, and we might not want to admit it, but the SEC bias, I think there's an easy avenue for Texas A&M to make it to the playoff.
I'm not going to use A&M, so and I feel I have a way, I have a feeling of where Alex may go on this, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. So I'm going to pick somebody different. I'm going to go with Oklahoma, and I'm going to say Oklahoma in this regards. I think if somebody from the Big 12 can win the Big 12 championship with only one loss, I think they have a shot to get in. I think there's only two teams realistically that can do that, and I think Texas is one. I think Oklahoma is the other. Brett Venables has always been a defensive guy. I don't think that defense is as bad as it was last year. I just don't think it's possible. They brought 3 or 4 really good kids in on the defensive side from the portal, and they still have Dylan Gabriel, who's a very experienced quarterback behind center. So if they can somehow get over the Texas hurdle and not lose that weird game in the middle of nowhere, that crushes their season, I think they have a long shot to get there.
All right, well, I'll make it short, quick, and simple. Oregon is definitely going to be in the college football playoff this year. You got Bo Nix coming back. Dude's a stud. He's going to be invited to New York for this, or Vegas, wherever the Heisman ceremony is this year, hands down. My only real concern with them is that he's on his 3rd different offensive coordinator in 3 years. They brought in UTSA's offensive coordinator, which ranked top 15 last year in total offense, though, and they really put emphasis on the quarterback throwing the ball. So I think Bo Nix is going to have an absolutely fabulous year. Put up Caleb Williams type numbers with a little bit less on the running side, due to the fact that they do have probably one of the top 3 two-headed monsters in the backfield in the country, behind Michigan, and obviously Ohio State's got a great running back tandem as well. But I do have Oregon going in. Their first real test comes second week of the year against Texas Tech in Texas Tech. As long as they can get through there, it's actually a pretty easy schedule until around mid-October, where they got Washington, and then obviously November 11th is going to be the show of the century with how many good matchups are on the 11th of November when they play USC in Oregon, and I think that matchup determines who goes to the college football playoff. But Bo Nix is a stud. He showed last year everything he can do with his 3,500 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. I do anticipate him lowering his turnover rate this year, as well as with the transfers of Tez Johnson and Trayshawn Holden. The wide receivers are probably the best receivers that Oregon Ducks have had collectively probably since 2001 with Joey Harrington. So we're going to see how that goes. I do have a Pac-12 team winning a Heisman, Pac-12 team winning the college football playoff, and it all depends on if they can get through that juggernaut of a schedule with Washington, USC, and Oregon all playing each other. As long as one of those teams comes out with only one loss, it's going to be a Pac-12 championship, and they're going to send out the Pac-12 on the right note.
All right, Alex. Well, I mean, I think we should just get right into it then. I mean, you can't just give us the teaser. We got our college football playoff futures coming up here. I don't know if you guys have 6, like a first 2 out, or like a scenario that you guys have going, but I want to hear who you got making the playoff then, because Pac-12 team, I don't have one in, so I'm curious to see who you have not only in, but bringing home the championship to the Pac-12.
Hey, this is the year, man. It's about time it happens. You want to go into it right now? Or you want to talk a little bit about a couple things before we get into it?
You segued us right in, bro. So we're gonna go.
All right, sounds good. So I got a couple teams on the bubble for my college football playoff prediction. The 2 teams that I have kind of that could make it in, depending on how a couple games go, is going to be Notre Dame and Penn State. I really like Penn State's new quarterback this year, as Aller. Is that how you say his name?
Yep.
I wasn't sure how to pronounce it. That dude is a beast. He's the real deal. He's going to put up some great numbers this year. With Penn State's defense is going to show up. Like I said, there's a couple matchups with Penn State have later on in the year that's going to kind of make or break their season, and that obviously that division with Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan is going to be a juggernaut and a bloodbath, and obviously it's going to be the reason I think 2 of those teams don't make it into the playoff this year. And then obviously Notre Dame, they could be a college football playoff team, or they could be 8-4. So who knows with that. But as far as my college playoff prediction for the 4 teams going in, I got the Oregon Ducks beating USC in the Pac-12 championship game. I think Washington has a great year. I think they finish up around 10-2, 9-3. Ultimately don't make it in. I also have Georgia. I mean, Georgia has a very cakewalk schedule this year. I was looking at it, and I think they didn't have an actual game until, what was it? Was it like 11-8? Yeah, November 18th, they play at Tennessee. But other than that, they don't have too much of a schedule going against them. They got to go to South Carolina early in the year. Obviously, Spencer Rattler, I'm sure we'll talk about him throughout this show. I see some good stuff come from him this year, and they have a chance to beat Georgia, but Georgia's schedule just looking a little bit too cakey for me. Then we got LSU coming in at number 2. I got Jaden Daniels leading the way. He had 2,900 passing yards last year, 885 rushing yards. He accumulated for 28 total touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. I mean, those numbers are video game numbers. I expect this kid to show up. Well, he's a 5th-year senior with Brian Kelly, 2nd year under his offense. The running backs need to step up. And Harold Perkins and Omar Spates, however you say his last name, they're transferring in as linebackers for the defense. I mean, they're going to be fantastic. I mean, this team is honestly the team that I believe should be number 3 right now in the country in the preseason poll. And then last but not least, I don't have Bama. I got Michigan coming in out of the Big Ten. They got the best running back duo in the country, in my opinion, over 2,400 yards. J.J. McCarthy, he shows us what he can do when he can protect the football. Only had 5 interceptions last year, 2 of them coming in the biggest game of the year. And I expect him to come in with a chip on his shoulder, throwing tutties, doing dance moves. It's going to be a great year for Michigan, and I do expect them to come out of the Big Ten and ultimately get into the college football playoff.
Did you do top 6 like I did?
Yeah, I also have top 6.
Good control.
All right, so I mean, I'm already disappointed, Alex. I know you're a Ducks fan. You know, I get it. You know, the Ducks being there, like I fully support you being behind your team. Bo Nix, you know, he's on his 9th year of eligibility out there in Oregon.
True.
So he's got his experience, and you know he's got Dan Lanning. Like I love what they're doing out there in Oregon. So I'm with you there. But you really broke my heart telling me that Michigan's your number 4 team and you have them winning the Big Ten. Like that hurts. That hurts. But you know, I'll get into mine now. Number 6, this might hurt you a little bit, but I got USC being the 6th seed well, they were not going to make it in, but I got them being one of the first 2 teams out of the college football playoff. I think ultimately USC, you know, running that gauntlet of the schedule of the Pac-12 this year, I think it's going to be tough for them. I think they're going to be a 2-loss team, and I think they're not going to make it in. I think they can win the Pac-12, but being a 2-loss Pac-12 champion, I don't think that really holds any weight, especially, you know, with everything else that's around in the college football landscape. You have Caleb Williams coming back. Obviously, they did lose Jordan Addison, though. I think that's a huge blow for them. Now, they still have some talent out there at receiver, but I just think that the USC team as a whole, Caleb Williams can't just go out there and lead you to a win every single week. And you saw that last year. Their defense was abysmal. And, of course, I expect it to be a little bit better this year because last year was absolutely awful. But, you have to have a better defense to win games because Caleb Williams, he can't go out there and be Superman every single week. And now the tape is out there of him as well. So I do think, Caleb is gonna get his, and he's still gonna be, a fantastic quarterback. But I think USC slips up a couple times along the way. So I think that's what ultimately holds them out. My number 5 team is a team that I can 100% still see them getting in, and that's Texas A&M. I think they're going to be a one-loss team when it's all said and done. I think they go undefeated through the regular season, and their only loss of the year is to Georgia in the SEC championship game. Now, the one issue with that is the team that I have ahead of them at number 4 is Penn State. I think Penn State has one loss on the year, and that is to Ohio State. They're traveling to Columbus for that game. Drew Aller's, biggest game of his career up to this point will be on the road. And I think they ultimately lose that game. But I think Penn State has the luxury of, they're not going to be in that Big Ten championship game if that's the case. So I think Penn State being at home, not losing, and depending on how that A&M Georgia game looks, if Georgia blows out Texas A&M, I think that ultimately moves them down from wherever they were at to out of the playoff, especially if Penn State can keep a close game with Ohio State. And if they can beat a team, like Michigan, if they, let's say they vice versa, they beat Michigan and they lose to Michigan, but they beat Ohio State. I think that could still have that same kind of effect for them and ultimately get Penn State into the playoff this year. My number 3 team, Texas. I told you guys before we were talking about the AP poll. I love Texas this year. Quinn Ewers, I think, is going to take that step. And I think the only game that they really have to, well, obviously, Oklahoma, their rivalry game, that's going to be huge. But outside of that, the only other game they really have to worry about is that game against Bama. And I have so many question marks with Bama right now. I don't love their quarterback situation. I don't love what they have weapon-wise at receiver, tight end, and or running back this year. So I do think this is going to be more of a down year for Bama. I think this could be a year where we see Bama lose 3 games and, not be in the mix towards the end of the year of being in that, college football playoff discussion. Now, last year, we saw how much they struggled and they had a Heisman-esque candidate in Bryce Young, but that still, wasn't enough to even have them in the mix really for college football playoffs. So I think more of the same continues for Bama, and I love Texas to get into the playoff. Number 2, team that I have winning the Big Ten, I think they run the table. That's Ohio State. Now, schedule-wise, I think if you beat a team like you beat Penn State, you beat Michigan, and then whoever comes out of the other side of that conference, you probably should be the number 1 team. But I don't think you can when Georgia hasn't lost a game in a calendar year, and they're going to go out there and destroy people. I don't think their schedule. I think their schedule is very light, but if you're the reigning champion and you run the table again, there's no way somebody can unseed you just because they had a better schedule than you. So I think Georgia is going to be the number 1 seed going into the playoff, and I don't think that's going to be necessarily close.
All right. So, you see, here's the difference between me and Cottrell, Alex, and you'll see this soon. Cottrell lets his hate for Michigan, just free flow out. I don't like Ohio State. I hate them. I can be unbiased, though.
No, but listen, though, Bill, it's not even – no, because I didn't even dive deep into why I had Penn State being at the 4th seat, but I truly think – and I said it on Wire to Wire on Wednesday – I truly think there is a scenario that plays out where Penn State is 11-1, Michigan's 11-1, and Ohio State is 11-1. Obviously, I can't think about that and fathom that being the case because that means that we lost to you guys for the 3rd year in a row. But I think Michigan having to travel to, Happy Valley and play in that atmosphere, if anybody slips up in a game, I think it'll be Michigan slipping up there. And, of course, I got, Penn State losing to Ohio State in the shoe. So I just think Michigan's in a spot where they could have 2 losses. Ohio State's going to be pissed off. They've already lost 2 years in a row. I think that's going to be a loss for them. And I think Michigan traveling to Penn State is going to be a loss. But other than that, though, I mean, I think Michigan can be that 4 seed as long as they take care of business in Penn State. But I just don't see that happening this year. That's all.
Here's the problem, Bill. Before you take over, Bill, let me throw this in there. Here's the thing with the Penn State schedule is you're focusing on Ohio State and Michigan. Problem is they got to play Iowa September 23rd. And we're going to see what that quarterback for Penn State's made of, and we're going to see what Cade McNamara is made of, and that will be the true test if Iowa's real and if Penn State's real. So let's not skip that game and start talking about Ohio State and Michigan just yet, because Iowa's here to stay. Well, I'm sure we'll touch on that more later.
Hey, I like it.
So I'm going to, I think the chaos in the Big Ten is going to happen. I just think it's going to happen a little differently. I also, my problem with, I went back and forth with what I wanted to do with the Pac-12, and it's my problem is I think the same chaos is going to happen within that conference. I think the problem is you're going to have a conference champion with 2 losses, and I think when that happens, I think it becomes very, very, very difficult for you to make the college football playoff. And I think the same thing's going to happen this year. I'm going to go ahead and put one team that we just talked about at number 6. I'm going to put Penn State at number 6. Because I think they're only going to end up with 1 loss. I do agree. I think there's a very good to, if not better, shot that they beat Michigan at home. I also agree that they're going to go to Ohio State, and I don't think they're going to win that game. I think Ohio State being home at the Horseshoe, Drew Aller. We just talked about the Iowa game. Is that Iowa game home or away for Penn State?
They are playing in Penn State for Iowa.
Okay, so that's going to be a home game for him. The first real, vicious, hard atmosphere to play in is going to be when they travel to Ohio State. We'll see what they look like by then. But I don't, I could say, sitting here now, I don't think anybody can make me a compelling case that they're going into the Horseshoe winning that football game. Obviously, 8 weeks from now, if there's injuries or somebody's playing better, whatever, it's a topic we can come back to. But if you're asking me right now, I think Penn State goes to Ohio State and loses. I have them number 6. Number 5, I have USC, who is going to be a 2-loss Pac-12 champion. I think if you take USC, Oregon, and Washington, put them in a bag, shake them up, they're all going to play each other. And you factor in Oregon State, Utah, once Cam Rising comes back. I feel like it's just going to be a bloodbath out west. That's just my honest opinion. And I think for them to make the college football playoff, if somebody can come out of there with 1 loss and win the conference championship game, I think they make the college football playoff. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think those teams all have glaring weaknesses, and I think the top 3, I think, are all the same. I don't think anybody's going to sweep all those matchups. I think they get put in the same situation as the Big Ten. The difference is I think somebody from the Big Ten is only going to have 1 loss. And I think if you have 1 loss in the Big Ten, you're a conference championship or conference champion, you're clearly going to make the college football playoff. So number 6, number 5, I had Penn State. Number 5, I have USC. Number 4, I'm going to go with Ohio State. This is where me being unbiased plays into all this. I think Ohio State's only loss this year will be at Michigan the last week of the year. I think as long as a USC team or Oregon or Washington, whoever comes out of the Pac-12 with 2 losses, I think Ohio State probably sneaks in like they did last year. I think they get number 4, and I think you're probably going to have the same rematch of the semifinal that you did last year. Number 3, I have Texas. I have Texas as a 1-loss conference champion. Again, I think this is finally the year that they actually are back. I know we've been hearing it for 4 years now, but I think as long as Quinn Ewers takes that step, they have Xavier Worthy. The defense is going to be better than they were last year. Cottrell brought up the point, of the Alabama-Texas game. They were the better football team for, 58 minutes of that game last year. They should have won the game. If they didn't have the injuries and if Bryce Young didn't lead them down on, just an incredible drive, Alabama really didn't deserve to win that football game. I think they're a 1-loss Big 12 champion. I think they probably maybe lose to or Oklahoma during the regular season, probably beat them again or probably beat them in the conference championship game, or maybe they slip up somewhere else. But I think they get in as the number 3. They'll go in front of Ohio State just because they are a conference champion. Number 2, I have Michigan at 12-1. Again, I already touched on it a little bit. I think there's a decent to good shot they go to Penn State and lose. I do think Penn State screwed the pooch a little bit with scheduling that game. They could have made that the whiteout game, which is what I would have done, and they didn't. They decided not to do that. That's probably going to be a noon kickoff. I think Penn State did themselves a huge disservice there. I think that helps Michigan. Beaver Stadium is not an easy place to play in at all. To take that night game and take that even more of a home field advantage away from Penn State, I think was a mistake. That being said, I still think Michigan loses that game. If they slip up anywhere, it's going to be there. I think they come back. I think they beat Ohio State at home for the third year in a row. And I think they go to the conference championship game, they probably either beat Wisconsin or Iowa there, get another ranked win. I think they're firmly the number 2 seed. And number 1, I have Georgia. And I kind of agree with Cottrell. They haven't lost a game in seems like forever. And until somebody knocks them off, I think they sit atop the mountain. And somebody's got to go in and do that. I think they're more beatable this year than they have been the last 2 years. That being said, I don't think Tennessee has it. I think Tennessee lost too much. I think that's beginning of the year, the South Carolina game, I guess, could be kind of tricky depending on what you do get out of Spencer Rattler. I don't know if Jekyll or Hyde shows up for that game because he can look amazing and he can look like a Division II quarterback in the span of 5 minutes. So depending on what Spencer Rattler and South Carolina team you get, I think that game could be a little tricky because it is the beginning of the year. But that being said, I think Georgia rolls into the SEC championship game undefeated. I think they take care of whoever they get, have it be LSU, Bama, Texas A&M, whoever from the other side. I think they win, and they will probably be the number 1 seed come January for the college football playoff.
Bill, for what it's worth, we see everything pretty much shaking out the exact same way. It's just that Saturday after Thanksgiving, you have your Wolverines winning, and I got Ohio State winning. If Ohio State wins, then I'm right. If Michigan wins that game, then you're right. Like, we see everything the same. There's no bias involved here. You think your team's going to win? I think my team's going to win. We see the Penn State-Michigan game the same. We see pretty much everything else the same.
I don't think it's definite. I think Michigan can beat Penn State. And like I said, it being a noon kickoff, that makes me feel better. I mean, that place will still be rocking, don't get me wrong. But
for sure,
I would not want the 7:30 whiteout kickoff. That I would want no parts of that. I think they're flip-floppable. I think if Michigan goes in and beats Penn State, then I would say, an Ohio State holds serve at home. I would almost say as long as that last week is competitive, I think they're both in. I think we'll be in the same situation we were in last year, if I'm being honest. I think it'll be the exact same thing. One will be 2 and one will be 4. And I do agree with you as well. I think if you take strength of schedule out of it, I think if you get a Big Ten team that runs the table and goes undefeated, I think at the end of the year, their resume is going to be better than Georgia. I don't think they'll take Georgia out of that 1 seed because I just don't think they'll do it. But they should. Yeah.
Alex, I want to kind of hear from you when it comes to the Oregon and, being in the Pac-12, of course. What do you think their toughest game of the year is going to be? I think it's easy to say it would be either Washington or USC, but which one do you think is going to be the toughest one for them?
All right. So USC, we get them at home. If you've ever been to Autzen, people talk about the Huskies in Washington Stadium being the loudest in the country, one of the loudest in the Northwest. Autzen Stadium, if you've never been there, is one of the loudest places to play. I've been to games there 15, 20 times, and it still amazes me no matter who they're playing, Portland State, USC, or anybody, that crowd is rocking. They'll be ready to go. So when that comes to that, honestly, their biggest test of the year for me is going to come on September 9th. Who they got September? Oh, yeah, against Texas Tech. That's honestly, for me, their biggest schedule, kind of like you were talking about with Penn State's home field advantage. Texas Tech is also going to be having a night game against Oregon that they're going to be doing a whiteout as well. So the atmosphere there is going to be absolutely insane. If they can get through that test right there, I think that'll kind of catapult them into an undefeated, possibly a 1-loss season. But if I had to pick the toughest Pac-12 opponent right now, I would honestly have to say it's probably going to be Washington. Michael Penix Jr. is on a whole nother level. With them losing their running back this year, he's about to go off 5,000 plus passing yards. We'll touch on that later. I keep getting ahead of myself. But as far as Oregon's toughest test, I do have them against Texas Tech as their toughest test of the season. USC, I'm going to cakewalk. Obviously, when we get to that game, I'll talk seriously about it. I just hate USC, Oregon State, and Washington with a passion. But the game I'm looking forward to the most is going to be on the road at Texas Tech early in the year. Really get a chance to see what the new offensive coordinator can put together. They're going to have to put up points that game. Let's see what their offense is all about, and then that game will determine if I'm worried going forward.
I think the one interesting thing that you bring up there is obviously, the road factor is going to be huge for Oregon, traveling down to Lubbock to play Texas Tech. I think the one interesting thing though is, you mentioned before that there's going to be a Pac-12 champion, and you also think that the Heisman's coming out of the Pac-12. So not being really too concerned about, Michael Penix Jr., who's considered a Heisman candidate for some teams, and you got Caleb Williams, who's also, he's coming off a Heisman season, not being too worried about those guys. I mean, that says a lot about the confidence that you have in the Ducks this year.
This is probably the most confident I've felt in an Oregon Ducks team since Mariota was quarterback. And before him, Joey Harrington. So this is honestly Hollywood ground that they're on right now. Their potential is a national championship. They could also lose 3 games. So it's kind of like Notre Dame for me, where it's boom or bust. And we're going to find out early in the season on September 9th if they're going to get smacked in the mouth or if they're going to get up and play for the season. So we'll find out. But hey, this is Tailgate, or Saturday College Tailgate. We're cooking up hot takes all day. And that's what I'm going to bring to the table.
So I got to ask you, because I know you said personally you hate USC. Obviously, Michigan's biggest rival is Ohio State and vice versa. All the idiots from Michigan State like to think that it's them. For us, it's not. We don't care.
Nobody cares about Michigan State.
Nobody. Now, would you say universally, is it your rivalry game is literally called the Civil War. And over the years, there's been some big upsets in that game. So it is a fun game to watch all the time at the end of the year. Would you say, as a fan base, would you say it's Oregon State, or would you still consider it? Because I feel like if you had to ask me from an outsider's point of view, I know you have that in-state rival. I feel like your biggest rival overall, though, is Washington. I feel like you and Oregon and Washington have the Ohio State, Michigan State, or Michigan hate.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Oregon teams and Washington teams in general hate each other. It doesn't matter what sport you're playing. If you're playing slow pitch softball, they hate each other. If you're playing college football, they hate each other. But for us, Oregon State is by far our biggest rival. Up until the last couple of years, though, it's been such a one-sided rivalry with Oregon dominating over the last 10 years that now it's actually exciting with Oregon State bringing in a good quarterback. Their team is improving, so the game actually has more attention on it now that both teams are actually decent and playing well instead of one side just blowing out the other. But Washington is by far our biggest out-of-state rivalry, and that game is going to be absolutely amazing. I can't wait. I'm trying to get tickets to it actually on the 14th of October. We're doing live from Washington Stadium, going there and kicking some butt. But no, as far as the Pac-12 goes, man, USC is a personal rival of mine, dating back with Matt Leinart and all that, or early 2000s. But now that they're actually back relevant again, Lincoln Riley is a fantastic coach. And now that they're actually putting wins on the board, they have an amazing quarterback. Their defense should be improved this year. So it's bringing a lot of fun back into that rivalry. And the fact that they're both going to the same division next year, same conference next year, we're going to be seeing that matchup for a long way to go. And I'm excited to see where Oregon State ends up.
Yeah, so comment, our fearless leader from Wire to Wire, Gene, just commented about Civil War and Oregon State being a sleeper. They are one of the teams why I think it's going to be hard for a Pac-12 team to come out with one loss. I feel like somewhere down the road, somebody's going to go to Corrales and DJ's going to beat somebody that they're not supposed to beat. I think that team showed signs of life last year. I thought they were decent. They have a couple, really good returning starters on both sides of the ball. And now you're giving them a 5-star, a former 5-star quarterback kind of, looking to rejuvenate his career and get back into talks of being a pro football quarterback, either next year or the year after. So, and that's not an easy place to play either. I've watched enough of those Civil Wars and, watch Oregon go up there and struggle. It's not an easy place to play. And this is one of the reasons why I like college football more than I like pro, and I love pro football. But the fact that you have to go and go to somebody else's campus and try to play, I think that's different than going to a city. I've always said that. I think it's a distinct difference. and I think college football fans are just as rabid as NFL fans, to even a different level sometimes. But I do agree with Gene. I think it's a good point. Oregon State will absolutely beat somebody when they're the underdog this year, and they will beat somebody that they're not supposed to beat.
Let me go ahead and address this real quick. The comments from Paul here. You are right. Bo Nix had a great relationship with the offensive coordinator last year. It really paid off for his style of play. However, this year they did bring in the offensive coordinator from UTSA, who ranked 17th in the country last year in total yards, I believe it was. And he's a passer-friendly offensive coordinator. Bo Nix is going to go off this year. I'm thinking 4,500 passing yards, probably 35 touchdowns. I actually think that they run the ball less this year, even with that dynamic backfield. But we shall see. So that is a good call out, Paul. But I do believe that with the new offensive coordinator in there, Bo Nix has transferred offensive coordinators 3 times in the last 3 years. This is not new to him. He'll pick it up and he'll be ready to roll.
And I want to address Brett's comment here. He was asking about some teams and players to watch. Brett, we kind of just went over our top 6 for the playoff, but we're definitely about to get into some players to watch for who we think ultimately are going to be out in New York when it's all said and done for that Heisman Trophy ceremony. So you guys have anything else like with teams to look out for with college football futures, anything like that you could see like sneaking into that top 6 area? Or
I mean, I'll address this question from kind of a different point of view. He said, teams or players. Here's what I can tell you. Every year, and the biggest thing you can do, and me and Cottrell do this. So, I mean, it takes a little time, and but if you really want to get ingrained in the college scene, what I do personally is, pay attention to this year's recruiting class. And I say that because in 2 years, it'll be the guys that you watch on TV every week, and you'll be familiar with them already. If you can kind of stay 1 year ahead of the recruiting, it really makes it easier to follow teams, follow their classes, and it'll coincide with where they are in the polls and how they play. In regards to teams, listen, every year you're going to have some combination of, especially the way it is now anyway, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. Brian Kelly's actually a pretty good recruiter. LSU, Michigan, USC, obviously, definitely, Texas, Oklahoma. I hate to say it, but I mean, it's a lot of blue bloods are pretty much in the top 15 in classes every single year. Notre Dame, still recruits well, obviously. But I mean, it's no coincidence the same, 10 to 15 teams are at the top of the rankings every single year. You have all the schools that recruit well in the South and out West, and then you have the teams from up north that can recruit, get down into those areas and recruit well, which are like Michigan's, Ohio State's, even Penn State. James Franklin's a great recruiter. And out West you have the USC's, you have the Oregons, teams like that have the brand names.
UCLA now.
Yeah, UCLA. I mean, they sneak in. They're probably never going to be in the top 10 consistently like some of the other blue bloods, but they're there. I mean, if you have top 20 class every year, you're going to have a really good program. And it's a lot of that coincides with, how they're, I hate to say it, but how they're portrayed in the media, and also what kind of brands they built. You know what I mean? Like Ohio State is a brand, Alabama's a brand, Michigan's a brand, Oregon is a brand. That helps with those kids. That's what those kids want to see. They want to go there and be a part of that. And that all helps with recruiting, stadiums, student life, all that stuff. It all matters. Alex could tell you, like Oregon with the amount of Nike crap they get. I mean, it's incredible, but that stuff all matters to kids, I would say it all factors in too. And it's all stuff you have to track. It's a very, I want to call it tedious, because if you enjoy it, it's great to do. Like me and Cottrell, when we started, wire to wire with Gene 3 years ago, we were talking about kids that weren't even on campus yet, and now they're all kids that we mentioned today. So if you're into it and you enjoy it and you really get into it, that's what you got to do. I would just say you have to be a year ahead of it. That's me personally. Cottrell probably has a different system than I do, but I know he gets, he's probably into it even more than I do, or more than I am, and I'm pretty knowledgeable on it. So for me, that's my system. I hope it helps. If you have any questions at all, by any means, you can message me, whatever you want to do. But That's how I do it.
And I definitely want to address what Gene said. He's right in a sense that, Notre Dame can beat Ohio State this year. That's definitely possible. Significant advantage at QB. I understand Sam Hartman is that experienced guy. And I do get, Ohio State lost CJ Stroud last year, but you also have to remember that the two guys that are fighting for the job right now at Ohio State are two kids who were 5 stars when they came out in their respective classes. So Kyle McCord was Marvin Harrison Jr.'s high school quarterback, and Devin Brown was one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the country in his class. So I get it. They're going to be fresh. They're going to still be, wet behind the ears. So experience will definitely be a thing for them. But, talent-wise, they're going to be right up there with Sam Hartman. So just got to see where they're at that point in the year, which is the biggest question mark around Ohio State, obviously, at this point.
I will say Gene brings up a good point, though. I think, I fully expect Ohio State to win that game. I think a lot of people are looking past that game, though. I think it's going to be more difficult than, I don't know what your honest thoughts are on the Kuchel because we haven't got there yet. We haven't talked about it, and we don't have to talk about it right now. Sam Hartman was a huge get for Notre Dame, though, because they were in the situation last year where they really struggled at the quarterback spot. The only reason I would slightly disagree with Gene's comment is I think Tommy Rees leaving kind of like mid-cycle after Hartman was already on campus and going to Alabama and taking that job. And now the offense is, I don't know what their offense is going to look like. I think they had a distinct idea of why they went after Sam Hartman and what Tommy Rees wanted to do. And then he went up and left and went to Alabama. So, I'm curious to see what Notre Dame looks like today. You're not going to get a great look at it because they're playing Navy. But it'll be interesting. I think that transition could maybe go different than Notre Dame fans hope it was going to when it was first announced. But I think that's an interesting game. I'm going to be interested to watch that game because I also think, to Cottrell's point, I think it's going to be the first test really for whoever lines up at center in Ohio State. You're going to go play them in a tough spot. And it's going to be a big game for whoever is under center in that game. Who do you think, Cottrell, who do you think it's going to be? Everything I've read, and, it's not a ton. It's obviously not as much as you. I think it's going to be McCord, but that's what I've read.
It seems like it's going to be McCord, but the problem is that everything that I've been seeing so far, Devin Brown has been outperforming McCord at this point, but he doesn't have command of the offense. McCord obviously has been there. He knows those guys. You have that obvious connection with, him and Marvin Harrison Jr. from high school. I think it is going to be McCord, and Ryan Day said that whoever he names starter, he's not going to waver at, any sign of just, I guess, adversity, you could say. So I think the safe thing to do is throw McCord out there. I do think there will be situations where he brings in Devin Brown because he is that dual threat and things like that. But I ultimately think he's going to go with the experienced guy and have McCord go out there. Before we go to our Heisman Watch, though, Alex, because we just got into Ohio State, Notre Dame, I know you have high hopes for Notre Dame this year. That game against Ohio State, I would assume you have them being at 5 or 6, come the end of the season. So I would assume that you have Notre Dame actually taking care of business at home against Ohio State, right?
Yes, I do have them taking care of business. They got the best guard combo in the country, in my opinion. I think, honestly, that matchup will come down between Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Benjamin Morrison on Notre Dame's side defensively. He had 6 interceptions last year, and he's really coming into his own as a lockdown corner, and that's going to be the matchup to watch. It's not going to be about the quarterbacks. It's going to be about the defensive backs, Benjamin Morrison against Marvin Harrison Jr. Then, obviously, Notre Dame's run game with Audric, how do you say his last name? Estime. It's very hard to pronounce, all right? I'm working on it. But he had almost 1,000 yards last year, and without his secondary back who transferred to LSU, I feel like he's going to have a huge year. Sam Hartman doesn't need to throw for 5,000 yards for this team to be successful. The defense, like I said, is great secondary. The guards are going to keep him upright. He's just all he has to do is keep the ball in this team's hands, and they're going to be a threat way into January.
Damn, Cottrell, you just got put on notice, bro.
Hey, we'll see how it goes, man. We'll see how it goes, but do want to get into our Heisman Watch here. And then obviously, we'll go over our quick little week zero matchups before we wrap up here. But Bill, I got you going first here. So
all right. I'm up. Let's do this.
Break down the list.
All right. So I'm going to start with the obvious thing here and say I don't believe Caleb Williams is the 5th best college football player in the country. I think he's probably number 1. I think you can make an argument for a couple other people. He's probably going to be the number 1 pick in the draft next year in the NFL if he decides to come out. There's some crazy rumors coming out that people think he might stay out of nowhere now. I don't believe that. I think he declares. That being said, though, it's extremely hard to repeat to win the Heisman Trophy back-to-back years. You have to put up crazy numbers. You have to put up better numbers than you put up the year before. And I'm not saying he's not capable of that. I'm just saying I don't think he's going to do it to the level that would vault him up to number 1. Cottrell is very familiar with the last guy who won back-to-back Heisman trophies and Archie Griffith, and that happened back in the 70s. Hasn't happened since then. And if you look at some of the guys that have won one early in their careers and played the following year and still had great years, the Tim Tebow's, people like that, they didn't win back-to-backs either. So I have a number 5. Number 4, I have Blake Corum from Michigan. He had 1,500 yards through 10 games last year, 18 touchdowns. He was definitely on his way to receiving a invitation in New York. I don't think he would have won it last year, but I think he definitely would have been one of the final 3 before he got hurt early on in the Illinois game and, then missed the Ohio State game and the Big Ten championship game and everything else. So I think he is more than capable of putting up the numbers he did last year. The only thing that worries me about that is obviously we all know about Donovan Edwards and his emergence last year. I think the carry share is going to be a little bit of a better split this year than it was last year. So that's why I have him number 4, not higher up on this list. Number 3, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State, best wide receiver in the country, and I don't think it's close. All you have to do is listen to people talk about this kid and watch him play. If you know anything about football, you can watch him play. You watch how he runs routes, his separation. He had 1 drop last year. The kid is just uber talented. I said Caleb Williams is probably the best player in the country. I think this is one of the kids you can make an argument for. I think he's a stud. I hate that he's at Ohio State. I'm glad I only have to see him for 1 more year because he's going to go pro. He will be a top 10 pick next year. I think he's capable as long as, Ohio State can get their offense, running straight on the right tracks and get the ball in his hand. I think he has a chance to win the Heisman. I really do. You listen to his pro comps and and his comparisons and his talent level, and people throwing out names that are scary. I read an article. The guy, one of the guys said he's just every bit as good as Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, those type players coming out of college. Kid's an animal. He's a beast. Number 2, I have Jordan Davis, quarterback for Florida State. I think it's crazy, and myself included. Nobody mentioned, possibly making the college football playoff or even coming out of the ACC or anything like that. So, I think Florida State's entire season is going to kind of start and dictate based upon where, how well he plays. They're going to have to get past Clemson. I don't believe they play Notre Dame this year. I know Clemson does. I don't think they do. I think if you can get through the Clemson and the Miami game, I think Florida State is your ACC champion. I think they are kind of a dark horse to make the college football playoff. And if they're in that discussion come December, Jordan Davis is probably firmly entrenched in your Heisman Watch and your Heisman finalist list as well. Number 1 for me, I'm going to go with Drake May. I think he's going to have to put up crazy. Alex mentioned it earlier. I think he's going to put up video game numbers. I don't think North Carolina's defense is going to improve that much over last year. I think North Carolina is going to score 45 points a game to win football games. And I think a lot of that's going to come from the arm of Drake May. He can scramble. He can run a little bit as well. He's not a stationary pocket kid as well. I think he's going to be slinging the ball all over the yard. And I think as long as he keeps throwing it to his guys and doesn't throw too many interceptions, I think his numbers at the end of the year are just going to be crazy. I think North Carolina can't fall off the face of the earth, though. It can't be a situation where North Carolina is 7-6 because if they are, he's not going to win the trophy. Then they're going to have to be. I think if they're 9-3 or better, I think he has a legit shot to win the Heisman Trophy. So preseason, this is where I'm at. We're going to revisit this all the time. I think all of our lists will change probably fairly significantly through the year. But week one, this is where I'm going to start. This is my baseline.
All right, Alex, you're up. I know we got, and it's funny, we got a lot of same guys, but we got a couple different. So,
All right, perfect. Yes, so here's my Heisman Watch list. Obviously, it would be disrespectful to not include Marvin Harrison Jr. Like Bill did touch on, he is definitely one of the best wide receivers in college football, and if not the best by a long shot. Coming off last year with 1,263 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns. He does have a quarterback coming in this year. Just like you said, I do believe Kyle McCord, his old high school teammate who he won 3 state championships with, will probably win that starting job at Ohio State. So we'll see what kind of chemistry they can maintain on the college football field from high school. But I do see him having a fantastic year. Now, Drake May at number 4, he was a tough one to put in here. There's a couple other people that I had possibly being in that 4 spot, including Jaden Daniels. But Drake May is too good of an arm talent to not put on this list, at least to start the year off. What really worries about me with Drake May is he a big game quarterback? And the reason why I say that is last year, the last 4 games of the year, they went in with only 1 loss. They lost 4 games in a row, and Drake May himself did not throw for over 300 yards in one of those games, including an interception in each one of those games. He threw for 206, 268, 232, and 202 against Oregon in the bowl game, matching his interception total for the whole year in those 4 games. So he has to step it up. He just like Bill said, they have to be relevant in the season. And it really all starts off in week 1. They have to go into They have to play South Carolina, and he has to show up there. He has to outplay Spencer Rattler. And if he can do that week 1, then that'll keep him on this list the rest of the year as we watch him kind of progress. Now, number 3, I had him swapped in 1 and 3 when I was trying to make this decision. Bo Nix, he is an absolute stud. Like I said earlier, over 3,500 passing yards last year, 29 touchdowns, another 500 rushing yards to go with it. I do look for him to throw the ball more and run the ball less. I think he knows that he is very, very capable of being drafted first-round material come this next draft. I think he wants to avoid injury, and I do think with the new offensive coordinator, they are going to be throwing the ball a lot more and really showing what his arm talent is capable of. Number 2 is Caleb Williams. I think we probably all have Caleb Williams on our list. Obviously, being the previous winner, I already think that kind of puts him at a disadvantage. He's trying to do something that has not been done since the 74-75 season with Archie Griffin. But like I said, this dude is straight a made-up character in NCAA football 2024, whenever it comes out. 4,500 passing yards, 42 TDs, another 10 touchdowns on the ground. This dude is just a scoring machine. I just think that this year, I don't know if he can put up the same numbers as last year. I also think USC does not make the college football playoff. I think the schedule is too strong. I think they are put too much on a pedestal every single week that they're going to be getting their opponent's team's very best. And that includes today against San Jose State, who is not going to be a pushover, by the way. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then number 1, I got Michael Penix Jr. 2 weeks ago, if you asked me, he wasn't even on my top 5. But with the injury to Cam Davis, their starting running back at Washington, I do see them going to a very air raid attack with Michael Penix Jr. I do suspect he'll have over 5,000 passing yards and over 35 passing touchdowns. Problem with Washington is I do see them losing 3 times. Oregon, USC, and Oregon State later in the year beating them. So kind of like Drake May, as long as they're relevant, they're in the running for that Pac-12 championship game the whole season. He's going to be going crazy, over 5,000 passing yards. You heard it here first. If you want to put money on it, go for it. But Michael Penix Jr. is definitely going to be invited to New York. Pac-12 is taking home the Heisman Trophy this year between Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, and Michael Penix Jr. It's happening. Book it now. That's what I got to say.
Okay. Interesting. West Coast, keeping it West Coast. I love it. I'll get into my list here. And of course, starting off the list, similar to both of you guys, I do have Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's the best receiver in college football. I do think he's in a situation right now where everyone knows that he's the number 1 guy at Ohio State, but that doesn't really matter too much. I mean, he's always open, and I do think he has that luxury of, you know, most likely playing with this high school quarterback. So I think early on, especially for McCord, you know, really trying to get, you know, his feet under him, things like that, he's going to be looking at Marvin Harrison. I think he's going to have big games, you know, early on in the year. Of course, just like everybody else, Ohio State scheduled some cupcakes to start the year, you know, and you got Youngstown State and then teams like that. So I think Marvin Harrison Jr. can have big first halves against teams like those and, you know, really just put up the numbers earlier on in the year, where towards the end of the year, you know, you're looking at him being a 1,500, 1,600-yard receiver and ultimately getting an invite to New York for that Heisman Trophy ceremony. Now, my next run here, all 4 quarterbacks that I have here, the reason why I have these guys on the list is because I think they're going to be gamers this year. Drake May, no doubt about it, has a ton of talent. I don't think he's a gamer. Bo Nix, another one. I think he has a ton of talent. I don't think Bo Nix is a gamer. I don't think he shows up. I don't think he shows up for those big games. You saw it when he was at Auburn, you know, Auburn going up against Penn State. You saw it last year. I get it. You know, Georgia was a juggernaut. You saw it. Oregon playing Georgia. I don't view Bo Nix as a gamer. I'm sorry to say it, Alex. I like his talent, but I don't think he's a gamer. Spencer Rattler, he would have fell under that umbrella as well, but I saw him turn it around last year. You know, he had the big game against Tennessee. He had the big game against Clemson. Spencer Rattler is a guy who literally had been written off of everybody's radar after he had basically been vanished. He vanished in Oklahoma, lost his job to Caleb Williams, and then had to be sent to purgatory to go to South Carolina. But he handled that adversity well, and I think Spencer Rattler is going to have another phenomenal year. The nice thing about Spencer Rattler is, although he's in the SEC, I think he can afford to have 3 or 4 losses and still get invited to the Heisman Trophy ceremony as long as he puts up good performances against some of these teams. Like if you go out there and you put up 30 points against a team like Georgia and you still lose that game, people are going to respect that. And I think as long as those numbers are there, Spencer Rattler, talent-wise, he showed you at the end of last year that he can be, you know, a top caliber quarterback in college football. So love Spencer Rattler at 4. Number 3, I've been on Drew Aller since he came into college football. Quarterback, he's originally from Ohio. That's really why I've been on him for so long. Went to Medina, you know, that's a school in Northeast Ohio, put up tons of numbers there. And I thought last year he should have had the opportunity to challenge for that starting spot with Sean Clifford. I understand that Clifford was a 15-year senior there, and James Franklin loved him basically as a child. But Drew Aller was a better quarterback last year, and it showed once Sean Clifford got hurt in a couple games last year, and Drew Aller stepped in there, didn't miss a beat at all. I think Drew Aller is going to take this job, and he's going to take it by storm. That's really why I think Penn State is going to be one of those teams that can really come out of nowhere. I know they're already in the top 10 of the preseason poll, but I really think Penn State has a legit shot to not only beat Michigan, but I think they have a chance to beat Ohio State in the shoe as well. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. And a big reason for that is going to be because of Drew Aller. So love him at 3. Number 2, Caleb Williams. I think if I went into this year blind and I didn't know that Caleb Williams won the Heisman last year, he would be my clear number 1. But like Alex said, you know, when you win the Heisman from a season ago, you essentially come in, you know, with this monkey on your back already that, you know, you're going to not get votes just off of that alone. You can't just be as good as last year. You have to be better than last year. And, you know, Caleb Williams was absolutely phenomenal last year. Can he be better than that this year? Absolutely. But he doesn't have a Biletnikoff receiver like Jordan Addison still being there. So I think Caleb Williams, he takes a slight step back compared to last year. And I think that's still going to be better than, you know, pretty much every quarterback in the country. But, you know, again, he won the Heisman last year. So I think that's going to ultimately be his downfall. And so I think he gets invited to the ceremony, ultimately doesn't win it. The guy who I have winning it, Quinn Ewers from Texas. Talent-wise, no doubt about it, he is a top 2 talent in college football. When he came out, 5-star kid, one of the top quarterbacks in his class. He was the highest-rated quarterback to ever commit to Ohio State, and ultimately, obviously, didn't work out. He transferred down to Texas, but I think he has that year of experience under his belt already, and he knows Arch Manning is right there behind him. Quinn Ewers is a guy, arm talent-wise, where he can make any throw on the football field. And I think with Texas having that backing behind them of, Texas football and them actually having success this year and being back, I think if Quinn Ewers goes out there, he goes 11-1. Texas submits their spot in the college football playoff. I think you're going to be looking at Quinn Ewers hoisting that Heisman Trophy come early December. So those are my 5.
I do love how none of us have Caleb Williams winning it, though. That makes me extremely happy.
So hard to do. It's so hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen like Bill mentioned, you've seen the studs that have come before him. You saw Tim Tebow come back to school. You saw Johnny win it as a freshman, went back to school, didn't have a shot to win it. Troy Smith's another one that comes to my mind. It's tough to do. Trevor Lawrence was in school for 3 years. He didn't get to.
Yeah.
Andrew Luck was in school for a while, didn't get to. So I mean, I just think it's just too hard to do.
I do like your Quinn Ewers pick, though. Ever since he cut off the mullet, instead of being business in the front, party in the back, he's all business now, and I expect him to show out this year.
He is all business.
I think that the thing that's exciting for me this year is I think there's a couple teams I think we all agree to like at least be there or be in the mix. Other than that, though, I feel like it's I think it has the ability to be like a free for all type year. We mentioned, somebody can make a run on the Pac-12. Penn State could shock the world and beat both. I think they're capable of beating both Ohio State and Michigan. I've had all the Penn State fans the last 2 years, and I told them all, I think they're a little bit ahead of schedule. I still think next year is your year. And I say that, with confidence. I think Penn State will be the best team in the East next year. I think Ohio State and Michigan are both going to lose too much. Not saying they can't beat them this year, but you're going to have those running backs as juniors. Drew Aller is going to be a junior. That team is going to be incredibly good next year. But you got to go out and play the games. I think Georgia's really good. I don't think this Georgia team's nowhere near as good as the last 2 teams that won the championship, though. Alabama, I think for all intents and purposes, is kind of on an off year as well. Does LSU, does A&M finally take that step up and take the West? I think we have the ability to have a bunch of chaos this year, and chaos is good for us. I think we all hope chaos avoids our individual teams somehow, but the odds of that are probably not likely. Somebody on this panel is probably going to be upset come the end of the year. But I love it, man. Happens every year. It does. So, I think we're in store for a really fun year, and it's. Even today, man, I mean, there's no really good games on, but still just be able to turn the TV on later this afternoon and watch college football.
Segue shyly.
It's going to be great. It is. G gave me that name for a reason. Most of the time I do it by accident, so I can't take credit for it. But I mean, we're going to preview 2 games here today. We do have 2 ranked programs and bigger programs playing today. And then next week, man, we just get into the meat and potatoes next week. Everybody's playing. But we're gonna go into 2 game previews here, and then wrap up and get out of here, and we'll see you guys next week.
Quick question,
Alex. I know you got
a quick 3-second answer from both of you. Do you think that there is a team that will go undefeated this year? I personally think that we will have not one team that makes the college football playoff be undefeated this year. What are you guys thinking?
Yes, I don't know how Georgia doesn't go.
Georgia,
13. I mean,
yeah,
at least 12-0 regular season. Could they lose the SEC championship game? Yes, but I don't think so. So I'm gonna go Georgia and I got Ohio State being undefeated. So I got 2 teams.
I think there's a chance. I think I do agree with Cottrell, not necessarily with the teams, but I think Georgia at least gets to the SEC championship game undefeated. If they lose the SEC championship game, that factors into more what we just talked about. That's more chaos then. And I do think there's a chance that somebody in the Big Ten runs the table. I do believe that as well.
Iowa? I'm sorry. Next.
It's not going to be Iowa. Iowa.
But I do.
Iowa.
Wait for Iowa. Michigan.
Listen, Iowa could come out of the West. Listen, I'm very familiar with the guys. Obviously, they got that program this year. They're good kids. They're good character kids too. They're good teammates. They're going to help lead that team. The problem I struggle with Iowa is, are you still going to tell me your best weapon's a tight end? Because it's kind of where we're at.
True.
Cade will definitely still be, like I said, Cade will be able to throw the ball downfield more than they did last year. But that's ultimately kind of what, led him to not being able to keep the job, against JJ too. Like he's a crossing route. He's an underneath. He's very accurate. He doesn't like to stretch the field a ton, and Iowa's not built for that anyway. And then defensively on the side of the ball, they lost their 3 best defenders to the draft last year. But Iowa's always got those 3-star kids that turn into monsters and, go out to Iowa and, eat all the meat and the corn for a couple of years, and they come back, looking like professional wrestlers, and they're good football players. Kirk Ferentz is a great coach. He's been there literally forever. And Iowa is a really, really hard place to go play football. You see it every year. They upset somebody every single year at Kinnick, every single year. So they have a shot to get there. I think Luke Fickell gets undersold as a coach a little bit sometimes. I think what he's going to do with Wisconsin, I just think they're going to be a little bit better. I think as long as Mordecai can fit into that system, they're going to run kind of like a hybrid air raid, and they have Braylon Allen, who is an absolute stud. So they have a lot of experience coming back on defense. I think Wisconsin's just a little bit of a step ahead this year over Iowa.
And so, last topic on the docket. I know Alex has some strong feelings about this game, especially with it being West Coast. So might as well start there. You got San Jose State playing USC for the night game tonight. Alex, how do you see that game going? Is USC on upset alert here, or what we got going?
Great question. As far as my mind is concerned, USC is always on upset alert. But also, I am going to be realistic about their season. They are a head and shoulders better program than San Jose State. However, 30-point favorites is definitely a bit steep for my liking with Siobhan Cordero. He's one of the best quarterbacks that you've never heard of. He is from Hawaii with the tragedies that have been going on in Hawaii, which everything is in our prayers and thoughts, obviously. I think he shows out. He shows out for his home state. I think he has a better game today than Caleb Williams. I do think USC ends up winning this game probably by about between 17 and 21 points. But it's going to be a lot closer at halftime than people think. And then eventually in the fourth quarter, we're going to see the backups come in. But I think this game is a lot closer than people think. 30 points is just too much. 64.5 points is the line right now. I think we definitely go over. I'm looking at probably a 52-38 score right now. USC's defense has to prove something to me before I pick them as 30-point favorites.
So I mean, across the board, I kind of agree with Alex. I think 30.5 is a lot because I don't think San Jose State is that type of pushover. He mentioned their quarterback and their offense, and he mentioned the big thing for me. I'm not so much concerned to see what Caleb Williams is going to look like today. We know what Caleb Williams is. I'm a little bit intrigued to see what he's going to look like with the new receivers and the new offense, with not having Jordan Addison there and all that good stuff. I want to see if but the big point for me is what Alex mentioned. I want to see what this defense looks like. San Jose State can be explosive offensively. So if USC shows up with the same type of, gaping holes and not staying in gap responsibility and stuff like that, San Jose State will score points. I want to see what USC's defense looks like. I really do. That's my big thing. I mean, that is by far coming into the year their Achilles heel, and is what it's going to dictate how far they go this year, how they win games, they have college football playoff aspirations, all that good stuff. It is all going to depend squarely on how that unit plays. So that's what I'm going to be watching for. I think USC wins the game. Obviously, I don't think San Jose State wins. If I was betting it though, I would take San Jose State in the 30.5. I would. I think it stays closer than that range. I don't think USC covers. And, I especially don't think they're going to leave Caleb Williams or anybody out there on the field if it does get out of hand. So you always have the backdoor cover possibility as well.
So I'm in full agreement with both of you. So that means that San Jose State is probably about to get smashed today.
105 to 7.
Book the under. Book the under. I do think this will be a higher scoring game. I 100% agree with Alex. The USC defense has to prove it to me that they can, stop somebody. But I do think with this being the first game of the year, I mean, I think this is a game where you can really start to get those feelers out there. I think USC is in a spot right now where they have really no real expectation to have this game close. So maybe they try some different things here. And I think that, with that being said, this is going to be a higher scoring game. I think USC is going to be a team that gives up points. And, I also expect San Jose State to cover that 30.5. Now, I do think it's going to be narrowly because I do think this game is going to get out of hand pretty quick there. But and I think it's going to be a little bit quicker than fourth quarter. I think towards the end of the half is when USC will start to get their rhythm. They'll probably get a stop, go up, be up like 17 or so at half. And then they just keep it rolling from there because I'm sure USC does not want Caleb Williams playing out there in the fourth quarter. So I think USC wins the game. I do think it's going to be pretty handily, but I do think San Jose State will cover, but this will be a higher scoring game. I could see something like 51-20 or something along the lines of that. But in that first half, they go into halftime, it's 27-14 or 30-14, something like that. But then, second half comes and it starts to really get out of hand.
Yeah. I mean, the game could definitely play out that way. I mean, game flow obviously always matters. How long could San Jose State keep the game close? And can they get it to halftime and be within a score or two? And there's a lot, but I mean, it is. That game will be fun to watch. I'll tell you that much. You're not going to be, starved for action or scoring in that game. So if you want to ease yourself into the college football slate, that's not a bad one to start with. But the only other major game we have going on is Notre Dame versus Navy. They usually play each other every single year. They're playing each other the first game of the year this year because it's over in Dublin, Ireland. So obviously, you want to talk about a home field advantage. I mean, I can't imagine there's going to be too many non-Notre Dame fans in that stadium. What are you guys looking at for this game?
For Notre Dame and Navy, I'm really just looking to see how Notre Dame moves the ball today. I'm also excited to see how Navy comes out. I've been reading a lot that they might be switching up the offense this year and throwing the ball a little bit more, so that'll be interesting to see. I do think, kind of like the San Jose State USC game, it's going to be closer in the first half due to Navy switching up their offense. Notre Dame's going to have to make a few adjustments for that second half. I also see this game going under, with the conditions they're not familiar with. I'm not quite sure what type of field they're playing on today, whether it's artificial or real grass. And then obviously the big thing that we haven't even touched on yet is how will the new first down rules affect the overs and unders of games going forward with them not stopping the clock anymore besides the last 2 minutes of the first and second half. I think that'll come to play with Navy trying to control the clock and control the ball. I think we will see an under on this game just due to the fact, like I said, Navy's going to try to grind out the clock, unfamiliar situations as far as where they're playing, the field conditions, all that stuff. So I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be a first half. After that, it'll be kind of a blowout. Sam Hartman going off in the second half. But I have Notre Dame handling it pretty easily, but I am taking the under on that game.
So that's actually very interesting that you say that because I also have the under for a lot of similar reasons. I do think, with Navy wanting to pass the ball more this upcoming season, because I saw that same report, I think they're going to struggle a bit. I don't think those guys are too familiar with what that looks like. And I also think on the other side of the ball, Bill mentioned it earlier. I think Tommy Rees no longer being at Notre Dame, I think they kind of struggle a bit out the gate, figuring out how everything is supposed to move, getting everybody in the right spot. And not to mention, this is going to be Sam Hartman's first game with that Notre Dame team. So I do think Notre Dame's offense does come out a little bit lethargic. Maybe they score on that first drive, but then they stall out a bit. And then on the other side of the ball, I think that passing game is not going to work too well to start out for Navy. And they're going to get back to what they know, and that's going to be running the football. And so with that, I think that's a real recipe for the under. I understand their game last year was actually pretty close. Navy had a storm back in the second half, and Notre Dame ultimately ended up winning like 35-32, and that was clear over last year. But I don't think you're going to have more of that this year. I think Notre Dame is going to take control of this pace, and I think that ultimately it's going to be a game where I think it's going to be lower scoring. I could see a 27-13-esque kind of game. You know, I don't think you're ever going to be in a spot where Notre Dame can confidently take Sam Hartman out the game. I think Navy covers, but I don't think Notre Dame's ever in any jeopardy of losing. But I love the under in this one.
I like the under as well. And then you factor in the reports are it's pretty much going to rain the entire game. It looks like not like a monsoon or anything like that, but I mean it's not going to be the best playing conditions either. I do want to see what Notre Dame's offense looks like. Again, you know, you guys both touched on it. Sam Hartman's there. I want to see, you know, are they going to? He comes from he's a spread quarterback. That's what he came from at Wake Forest. So you know, I want to see how he feels and settles into running more of a pro style offense. Navy, I'm curious to see. This is not going to be your grandpop's Navy team, I don't think, this year. New coaching staff, they said they want to get away from, you know, the triple option or the wing T. They want to, you know, throw the ball more and run kind of a hybrid, more pro style offense. I think the problem with this is I don't know if they have the personnel per se to do this. You know, I think over the next couple of years, they might be able to transition and get more comfortable into it. I think trying it against what should be a pretty good Notre Dame defense first time out on the field is probably a recipe for disaster. That being said, I do like the under, like both of you. I think there's a chance Notre Dame covers, though. I do. I mean, I could see this game like 35-10, somewhere in there. I think Navy really might struggle to move the ball. But, you know, I'm curious to see it. You know, I would love to see Navy, keep this game close and make the Notre Dame fans sweat because, you know, I don't like Notre Dame either. So, and Navy is pulled the upset here once in a while. And usually find a way to keep these games close. Just like Cottrell said last year, they made a hell of a rally in the second half and, started getting Notre Dame people a little bit nervous. So, it'll be fun to watch. I think the atmosphere over there is going to be crazy. I think it'll be a great game to watch, from a fan perspective. 80,000 people in a soccer stadium, watching a football game named after, the land that they're in. What could go wrong? I'm sure people haven't been tailgating over there or anything. So it should be a fun game to watch.
All right, so we just ran through pretty much everything. Before we close up here, definitely want to ask, you guys got any final thoughts about week 0?
No, I mean, I love that we call it week 0. I do like that, some teams play earlier. I just wish there was kind of more of like a national opening day, just like football. Like I wish everybody just played week 1, but I get it. But I'm just excited, man. I'm excited to be doing this. This is going to be kind of a passion project for, I think, all of us. I mean, especially me and Cottrell. We kind of tried to do this, a couple years ago, and it didn't work out for whatever reason. But, this is my, favorite time of the year by far. After next week, you get the week up every Saturday and Sunday, and you get to watch football. And being a fan of who I'm a fan of, and obviously all three of us are fans of schools that are considered football schools. So, I just love it, man. Fall's around the corner. Wake up, you get a little chilly morning, get ready. We're gonna do the show, and we're gonna get off, and and then be able to watch football all day. So I love it. I'm happy to be here with you guys. I'm looking forward to it. I think it was a really good first episode. I'm gonna be really excited to see what we have in store.
Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you guys having me on the show. This is going to be a lot of fun this year. I think this is the perfect first season for the crazy college football season ahead of us, and we're going to break it down for everybody. And a little line to watch for the day that we didn't mention is UTEP Miners are, I think, -2.5 right now over Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State is first game in FBS. I think UTEP Miners destroy that team. This oversized, something to look forward to on the back end in case you're trying to make a little money. But other than that, I do appreciate you guys having me. And going forward, we're going to break this thing down, and I think we're going to have the hottest takes on the internet.
Okay, I love it. Well, I don't really have too much to say. Just like you guys, definitely looking forward to this. College football, clearly biggest passion for me, and obviously you guys love it too. With like Bill said, the teams that we root for, we get to go out, see these guys go out there and basically compete for a national championship every single week. Because if you slip up once, sometimes depending on the season, you slip up twice, there is no hope for you. So that's what really makes this fun, because you can really lose, any given week. Oregon, they're in a tough conference. Obviously, Ohio State, Michigan, tough conference. And, last year I know we had a big game against Maryland towards the end of the year. Michigan had that same week, almost lost to Illinois. So that's really what makes this thing fun. And, I can't wait to break it down with you guys for the entire season this year. So
Maryland,
this is going to be a fun one.
Maryland's a team that can ruin somebody's season.
That's what I'm saying.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Anything else from you guys?
Nah, man. Week 1 is under wraps. Like I said, same time next week, next Saturday, we will have a full slate of stuff to break down. So, we'll be back next week. Anybody who's listening, we appreciate it. Like I would say, we'll be sharing everything. Share it, please follow it, like it, do whatever you can do. We're going to finish the Facebook page this week, get some other stuff up, as well. We will have merch on the way. It's probably a couple weeks down the road still, but that's all that good stuff's coming. We gotta obviously focus on, this product first. So, we got to take care of the podcast first, but that stuff's all coming down the roads. I've already got a couple messages about other things. So, we want to, the one thing I want to say is, me and Cottrell have talked about this before, and, I don't think Alex is going to probably either, but I want this to be a very interactive show. Like, that's the one thing I do like about, especially like Wire to Wire. Like, you see all these comments pop up. If you're listening, put a question in there. I promise you, if we see it and, we can answer it, we're going to answer it. So, any kind of feedback, interaction, we are all for it. Don't think you just have to sit there and listen and not comment or anything like that. We encourage it. So, this is the second go around for me and Cottrell. It's kind of crazy to, if you look at where we started Wire to Wire with Gene and where that show is now and how much that's taken off. And me and Cottrell kind of made the decision to, start over and try it again. So, we got something else we got to build. So it's going to take a lot of hard work, but, we're looking forward to it. So everybody that's listening, again, we appreciate it. Share it, tell people about it, tell your family, do whatever you got to do. But any kind of following or support is greatly appreciated. So, and Alex, you got the big responsibility of breaking us into that whole neck of the woods out there. So, you're going to be our champion out west. So, give Alex some support, and we'll be back here next week.
Yeah, another thing too, I just want to mention real quick here is obviously, we mentioned that we like the unders, spread wise, we like, San Jose State, things like that. Next week and moving forward, we will have picks every single week, our best plays, things like that too. So if you're looking to make a little money earlier on Saturday mornings, definitely want to tune in, see what we got going. But I agree with you guys. I do think it was a great show. Can't wait to be back here next week. But for now, get to go sit back and wait for these afternoon games to kick off. Yep. So
it's only going to get better, boys. It's only going to get better.
Have fun. And I'm really looking forward to next week. So we'll see you guys next Saturday.